What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp Podcast. I am here with Steve,
Hello.
as always, and this is going to be our kind of halfway through the first round sort of episode. We're recording this at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the 8th of May. So, all of the series to this point have played at least 3 games, and the Carolina Bruins series has actually played 4 games. Currently, right now, the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild are playing Game 4 right now. St. Louis is absolutely dominating. They're up 3-1, and they're tripling up the Wild in shots. So it looks like they're very much on their way to tying that series up 2-2. But
I mean, Jordan Kyrou just made like an absolutely no, it wasn't Kyrou, but whoever was made an absolutely disgusting move to score that goal to make it 3-1.
it was Kyrie, yeah. It was pretty nasty, I'm not going to lie.
Just
Um,
was like, see you later, guys. I'm gonna go score this real quick. It's like, oh, okay.
so, yeah, keep that in mind. By the time you guys are hearing this, probably going to be Monday night. The other games will also have played 4 games to this point: Toronto, Tampa, Edmonton, LA, and Minnesota Wild, St. Louis Blues. But that's just the nature of podcast. So let's start we'll start in the East. We'll start with the teams that have actually played their 4th games to completion, and that is the Carolina Hurricanes and the Boston Bruins, currently tied 2-2. The Carolina Hurricanes taking the first 2 games at home by scores of 5-1 and 5-2. The Bruins winning Game 3 4-2, and winning their game today 5-2, with a couple empty netters in there. So I guess I'll go to you first on this one, Steve. What have you thought about this series so far?
I guess. Hmm. I guess the best way to put it is it's one of the only series that resembles playoff hockey, and it's like competitiveness and its like intensity level. I know like the scores in Carolina looked like kind of wide swings, but I'm pretty sure a lot of those games were empty netters. There was like 1 or 2 empty netters involved, so they've been a lot tighter than they've looked. I mean, except for games 3 and 4, where Boston actually looked like a completely different team. But um, I don't know. It's been an interesting series, that's for sure. I mean, Boston's top line was pretty quiet for the first couple of games, and they seem to be like on fire right now, like unstoppable. Like Marchand had what, 5 points today?
Yeah, so the Marchand Bergeron Pastrnak line, Marchand has 9 points so far. Bergeron has 6. Pastrnak has 4. Um, it's been very interesting. I think home ice means a lot in
It
this
means
series.
everything so far, yeah.
When you look at the Boston Bruins, and they're not the deepest team, right? Charlie Coyle, he has 4 points. Okay, DeBrusque has 3. Taylor Hall has 2. But then the next forward after that, Eric Howla has 1, and then no other forward has a point so far. So it's like your first line's doing really well. Your second line's doing okay. I mean, a couple of Coyle's points have come on a power play. DeBrusque's goal today came on a power play. Um, but then other than that, nothing's really going on for this team, right? And
Right.
I think that's really where home ice is and a really, really big factor in this series because, when you're in Carolina, Carolina gets the matchups that they want. They can put Jordan Stahl out against the Bergeron line. They can put, Sebastian Aho out against the Bergeron line. Whereas when you're in Boston, you're getting a little bit more of those favorable matchups to go your way because you have last change. And it's been very interesting to see that it's kind of like a duel, right? Like Bruce Cassidy versus Rod Brindamore. Rod Brindamore trying to just shut down that top line, and I mean also the penalties, right? Like the penalties
Yeah.
have been killing the Hurricanes. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I mean the officiating's definitely been a factor in I think almost every series to varying degrees. But the fact that Boston keeps converting on their chances is really, I mean, Carolina just keeps shooting themselves in the foot, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the penalties today, the Bruins went and scored 2 goals on their power play. So if they don't score those 2 goals, then you take away the empty netter, and you have a 2-2 game heading into overtime. Basically, it's it's been interesting. I mean, the Bruins have actually made a goaltending change. Jeremy Swayman's played the last 2 games. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it was really Linus Olmark's fault. Like, did you think that maybe he wasn't as sharp as they thought he was going to be? Or Do you think that this
I
was
don't
just like
know.
the coach trying to say, let's just wake up the team?
Yeah, I think it was more just you're down 2-0 and you're trying anything to not put yourself in a 3-0 hole. So you have nothing to lose by changing goaltenders there. So I don't know if it's really like a knock on Linus Allmark as much as it was just like, hey guys, like we need to do something, you know. And this is really one of the only options he had available to him. But I mean, I guess it's been big, right? Swayman's been huge for them in these last two games. I mean, he's only given up what 4 goals in the 2 games he's played. 2 goals the other night and 2 goals today.
Yeah, it's been very, interesting to kind of see the way that this is going on with the goaltenders. And again, it's always that question mark of, how much of it is the goaltenders doing versus how much of it is just simply getting the matchups that you want whenever you want, and that's not
Yeah,
taking away anything from Swayman, obviously. Which also, I just think it's really funny that Swayman's coming in and like saving the team when like earlier in the season he got the boot because Tuukka Rask wanted to come back.
yeah. Imagine if they'd stuck that out.
Yeah, I don't know. So where do you see this series going from here? Tied 2-2. Obviously, the Hurricanes have home ice advantage. I guess we'll start with Carolina and then we'll switch to Bruins. What does Carolina need to do to kind of reel the momentum back into their corner after giving up 2 games in Boston?
Well, I think they really need to just start asserting themselves more and playing their style of game. I really think in the last 2 games in Boston, they've let the Bruins not really hang around, but they've let the Bruins really dictate the pace and the flow of the game and the tempo at which they're playing at. And we've seen Carolina, like, the argument people are making is that Carolina can't handle the physical nature of Boston's game, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's more that Carolina can't handle the slowness of the game. Like, Carolina's a big physical team itself, but they play the game in like faster than Boston does. And I think I was reading Mike Kelly said in today's game, Carolina outchanced the Bruins off the cycle 7-1, which only proves to show they can handle like that heavy physical game because they're generating off the rush, not off the rush, off the cycle. But I really just think it's asserting yourselves earlier and trying to get a lead and keep the lead and not let the Bruins try to slow you down. They really just need to keep their foot on the gas pedal and really like I said, assert themselves. Make sure that they're playing their game and not the Boston Bruins game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily like. I agree. Um, I don't think it's the physical nature of the Bruins that's really causing a lot of issues for the Hurricanes. Because it's not like the Bruins are scoring off of these.
Big hits or like these plays where like they're grinding them down. I think actually from the same stat per Mike Kelly, the Bruins were outchancing the Hurricanes off the rush and from the slot. So it's like the argument that it's the physical nature of the game doesn't really back up the fact that they're generating from inside the ice, which is usually one of the least physical places on the ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I honestly, if you want my opinion, the number one thing that they just have to stay out of the penalty box. I mean, right now the Carolina Hurricanes through 4 games have a team combined total of 42 penalty minutes, which over those 4 games you're averaging 10 and a half penalty minutes a game. You're averaging almost 5 or 6 penalties a game, and when you're facing a team like the Bruins who are not that deep, you can't give them those opportunities on a power play because that's where they're going to burn you. That
Yeah, you can't give them any extra opportunity to put Bergeron, Pasternak, and fucking Marchand on the ice.
like let's look up the penalty kill percentage for the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes penalty kill right now is middle of the pack at 77.3%.
Which is not good at all through 4 games,
The
especially when you're
Bruins,
taking as many penalties as they are.
yeah, like the Bruins are clicking at a 22.7% on a power play, which basically means if you're giving the Bruins 4 or 5 power plays a game, you're almost guaranteed to be giving up a goal. Where conversely, the Bruins are killing 90% of the Hurricanes power play. when you're losing a special teams battle that badly, you can't just keep putting them
In a
on the power
position to
play.
keep doing that. Yeah, you can't let them keep burning you.
If you stay out of the box and you keep taking advantage of the fact that the Bruins don't really have much depth beyond their first line and somewhat of their second line, I think you pretty much handedly handled the series. I mean, Charlie McAvoy also didn't play today due to COVID protocols, so he's most likely going to miss the next game too. I think it's unless he double negatives on his next test, he'll also be forced to miss that game as well. I'm not really sure what the NHL's quarantine rule is at this point. We know he's vaccinated, right? So um, that's a question mark that's up in the air. Hampus Lindholm is still out after taking an absolutely devastating hit in Game One. I mean, holy crap! Svechnikov just put this man in a coffin.
Oh yeah, he fucking sent him to heaven, bro.
And so for the Hurricanes, it's stay out of the box and just play the way that you need to play. And I think for the Bruins, the answer is you've got to find a way to get your third and fourth lines going. Because if the Hurricanes start to get their emotions under control and they start to play a more disciplined style of game and they start to lock up your top two lines, especially considering the fact that you're going on the road, the Hurricanes have a nice advantage. And the first two games were, Hurricanes victories on the road. You've got to find a way to get your depth going. And unfortunately for them, it's not like they really have an ace in the hole. They can't drop somebody from the top line down to the third line to get them going. But, I mean, you just got to find a way to do it. You can't.
Yeah, you can't keep, losing the 5-on-5 matchups like this. I really think the important thing, honestly, is, as I guess as obvious as it sounds, game 5 is probably gonna be the most important game in this series because if Boston can somehow find a way to squeak out a win in Carolina, I think Carolina's gonna be hard pressed to, win back to back with the next game being in Boston. Because you've seen how much the Bruins feed off that crowd. I mean, they they won 2 straight and they did it pretty handily on at that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of teams that I think would be able to go back to back after being down 3-2, and I think the Hurricanes are one of them. But to your point, it would be incredibly difficult for them to pull off, especially because honestly, they haven't looked very good on the road. It's not like, oh, we're losing these games in overtime, right, or double overtime. One bad bounce goes our way, we could have won. It's not like, for example, I'll just point out the Rangers game the other night where the Rangers come all the way back from a 4-1 deficit and really only lose on pretty much a fluke, completely healed shot. The Hurricanes really haven't been compelling on the road, right? So if you go home and you drop your game at home, that's going to be tough to ask in Game 6. I will say, do I think the Hurricanes are still going to win the series? Yes. I still think the Hurricanes are going to win this series because the things that they need to fix are simpler. Staying disciplined and staying out of the box is easier to do, in my opinion, than asking your third or fourth line to all of a sudden find a way to score goals, which is something that they
Yeah.
haven't been doing all year at all.
Yeah, so you can't just magically come up with them.
So where do you think that this series goes from here?
Uh, I mean, I still think Carolina wins it, but I think I called Carolina in 6. I think it's probably gonna go 7 now because I really think this home ice thing is gonna be a trend throughout the rest of the series. So if the Bruins really want any chance of winning this, they obviously need to find a way to win on the road, and right now they haven't seemed to found one. So until they can do that, I really don't see them being able to overcome Carolina, win the series.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the Bruins have been more compelling of a team than I thought. I think I also see Carolina in either 5 or 6, and I thought that the Bruins would maybe get a couple of squeaker wins, but I mean they've been winning big at home, right? So we'll see what ends up happening with that series. So Carolina, Boston tied 2-2. So I guess we'll stay in the Metropolitan Division. And we'll talk about the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins currently holding a 2-1 series lead over the New York Rangers. Rangers losing game 1 at home in triple overtime, then taking game 2 pretty convincingly 5-2, and then game 3 7-4. It really wasn't 7-4. It was 7. It was 5-4. The Penguins netted 2 empty netters. So very tight game 2 or game 3. Very tight game 1. Pretty handed Rangers win in game 2. So, from a Rangers fan perspective, how do you think this series is going so far? Is this what you expected?
I mean, yeah, I expected the back and forth swing, but I didn't think it was gonna. I didn't think the games are gonna play out the way they have, right? Because you can see when the Rangers find like a way to play a consistent game, like they did in Game 2, that they'll bottle up and handle the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think the biggest obstacle facing the Rangers is themselves. Like, they can never seem to start on time. I mean, you saw it last night in Game 3. They went down 4-1 in the first period and then roared all the way back to tie the game in the second period while putting up something like 18 shots to the Penguins, like 5 in the period, So it's like, clearly the Rangers have the ability and the talent to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins consistently. They just can't seem to find a way to consistently do it, which is like the biggest thing I think that might end up downing the Rangers in the series. Pittsburgh has looked okay. They haven't really been all that convincing as a team. I mean, the top line of Crosby and Gensel has been, well, through the first 2 games anyway, was pretty electric. But outside of that, I don't think Pittsburgh's really showing me anything that convinces me that they're the real deal this year again, Letang has looked pretty lost, and so is Evgeny Malkin. And if they want any shot of going anywhere, they need Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about this series is, when we were discussing the lead up to the series, I said that the big thing that the Pittsburgh Penguins have going for them is Crosby and Malkin, in terms of the Rangers not really having much of a shutdown center at their disposal. Well, Crosby's obviously been fantastic. 6 points through 3 games. Malkin, yeah, he has 2 points through 3 games, but he has not looked like he's engaged. He honestly looks like he'd rather be anywhere but wherever he's at. Like, he doesn't look like he wants to be playing hockey. He doesn't look like he's doing much of anything out there. And so that weakness of the New York Rangers has really turned into a moot point when you consider the fact that, okay, yeah, Crosby is Crosby. He's going to get his points, right? There's really not much you can do to shut down Crosby unless you have like an S-tier defensive center. But Malkin's kind of shut himself down in a lot of ways. So
just like powered down.
And Chris Letang is really showing his age in this series. I mean, he has looked very slow, very bad decision making. And I completely agree with you. I think the Rangers, to this point, when they use their speed, and not just off the rush, but when I'm talking about their movement in the offensive zone and their cycling ability, because how many times have you seen all of a sudden a guy in the high slot is just wide open, he gets a pass, he takes 2 or 3 strides, he hits the circles and shoots, That's happening over and over and over again. And the Rangers have done an absolutely fantastic job at opening up that ice and finding those lanes. It just seems like they can't sustain that momentum long enough through a lot of these games to really close it out. I mean, game 1 was electric, and then Kreider scores that shorthanded goal, and the Garden is going crazy. But then the Penguins find a way to kind of reel it back in, tie the game up, especially after such a strong start. And that's a big thing, is the Rangers are starting really strong in a lot of these games, right? Like the first period of the Rangers at game 1, they were really, really good, went up 2-0, and then the Penguins found ways to kind of reel it back in. And yeah, I mean, it really feels like this is if the Rangers play the way that the Rangers know they can play, consistently and for 60 minutes, that they should be almost running away with this series, quite honestly, like given the way that these games are playing out. I do want to ask a question here to you, and that's about Igor Shesterkin. And, his goals against average is not great, 3.23, but he's still
That's
rocking a,
mostly because of
like,
last night.
he's still rocking a 928 save percentage, right? So like you're looking at those two stats and you're like, how the hell is he saving 93% of his shots besides this many goals against? But like you said, he got pulled, right? So his goals against went way up.
Yeah, well, because he gave what 4 goals on probably like 10 or so shots in the first period.
One thing that I saw from Shirkin that I hadn't seen all season is after the second period in game one, when the Rangers gave up like that 25 shots or something like that, I actually saw Shesterkin look human for a second, in the fact that like he looked tired, which was weird because like even in a regular season when the Rangers were giving up like 50 shots, like this man was just like booting out 50 saves in a night and then like barely breaking a sweat, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you think that that's maybe an element to kind of the start of Game Three, where Shesterkin plays a triple overtime game in Game One, comes off even though the Rangers won a pretty substantial performance in Game Two. Do
Yeah,
you think
39
that
saves or something. Yeah.
do you think that maybe that's kind of an element to maybe why the start of Game Three was shaky for him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was necessarily bad in the start of game 3, but he definitely looked, like you said, human, like, and I mean, that you can only like ask the guy to do so much, right? He played a lot of games in the regular season where he had to stand on his head like this, and you're only making him do it again now. So there's gonna be nights where, yeah, occasionally he might look a little burned out, and I really think that's, no fault of his own. I really think it's more that the Rangers really need to find a way to, not shelter him, but like do a better job of making sure they're not getting as many high quality chances on him. You know, not getting as many shots so he doesn't have to make 39 saves even in a win.
There's no chance that Georgiev is starting Game Four, right?
Oh, no way. And that's not a knock on Georgiev because I mean, like, despite the kind of weak goal that cost the Rangers the game, like, he did everything they asked him to do. He came in, he settled the game down, and the Rangers tied the game. Like and for what it's worth, in after he came in, there was a stretch in the first minute or so of the second period where he had to make a couple big saves, and the Penguins tested him, and then the Rangers ran away with it. You know, and besides the one fluky goal, he did his job. Like he stayed in there, he hung in there, and he only gave up that one goal. You know, so you really could argue that like he earned a shot, but like Igor Shesterkin has just been so good. There's just no shot that you take the net from him now. This isn't a situation like it is in Boston, right? Where like Swayman and Allmark were like similarly as good as the other one was all year. Where this is just very clear, like Igor Shesterkin is the guy. Like the dude's gonna win a Vezina and probably get nominated for the Hart Trophy. Like that is not a guy you take the net from. It's like Carey Price in 2015. There were a couple of games in the playoffs where he might have gotten the boot, but like he still himself was like the guy, and nobody ever questioned that. And I think that really showed in, of course, being a Rangers fan, I watched the whole broadcast. So I watched like the stupid intermission report that everybody always skips. But they were talking to Kevin Rooney, and Kevin Rooney really kind of just said that. He's like, Igor, we left Igor out to dry, and Georgie just came in and settled the game down for us. Like, that's all we really could ask him to do. And he did it. That being said, goaltending has definitely been an interesting storyline in this series. I mean,
Well, Louis Domingue, who
yeah,
who
you had
picked him to
Casey.
be your Game Three starter, right?
Well, you had Casey DeSmith go down. Like, so what was weird about the Casey DeSmith thing was like he didn't do anything. Like, they showed the replay when he flagged down the referee to stop the play, and like I thought it might have been like his knee or something because it looked like he might have like toe picked the ice a little bit, but like he doesn't really do anything like all that strenuous that like would lead me to believe he like got injured like then. So like I was wondering if this was like a lingering injury that he had to kind of just be like play through because the Penguins had nobody else, you know what I mean? And I wonder if it's just like he couldn't not like handle it, but like the injury just obviously proved to be more serious than either he had anticipated or I don't know. But like it was very strange to see somebody give up, not give up, but leave a game in, double overtime.
It was, yeah, and it turned out to be like he had core surgery.
Mm-hmm. I think it was a so that leads me to believe it had to be like a hernia or some kind or something like that, because you don't really hear about people having core muscle surgeries for like torn muscles or like, you know what I mean? It's not like tearing your MCL or your ACL where like it's a common surgery to repair. It's like core muscle surgery is kind of like weird and like random, you know?
Yeah, it was very odd. Jari, we knew going into the playoffs wasn't going to be healthy. He's been skating, so
Yeah,
who
so here's the
knows?
question mark with that, right? Like, is he actually fully healthy, or do you think the Penguins aren't rushing him, but are trying to get him onto the ice faster, or probably maybe before he's fully recovered because they don't trust Louis Domingue going down the stretch?
I think the big question is with the Pittsburgh Penguins is they might be rushing him back to being healthy, if nothing else, for the sole reason that they don't have a backup without him, right? I think they have some kid whose name is like Diorio, who's completely untested, and thank God for the Penguins' sake, right, that they have Louis Domingue on a roster who's got the NHL experience, but if something happens, right, like you give up 3 quick goals in the first period, you don't have a Georgiev that you can come in and settle the game down with, right? So I
Hmm.
think that's probably a big part of it. Um, I don't know. I think it would be silly. And I'm not saying that Louis Domingue is playing great by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's doing enough to get them to win, which is, look, realistically, all you can ask of any goalie in the playoffs, right? Is just give me a chance to win. And he's doing that. If Tristan Jari is healthy, would you put him in game 4? Like if he's let's say for argument's sake, right? Like
100%
100%
healthy?
healthy, but obviously coming in completely cold.
Oh
Would
yeah,
you
no,
would you
that's
put
his
him
net.
in for game 4? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's his net. Not that Louis Domingue, like you said, has been bad, but like he hasn't been great either. So there's really no reason to run with him if your starter is completely ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I might, if I'm the Penguins and he's healthy, I might go into game 4 with Domingue, but on a short leash, and run with it because he is warmed up, but I don't know. It's weird because we know DeSmith's out. He's out for the playoffs. He's done.
Yeah,
So
no, gone, gone.
for these next games, what do the New York Rangers need to do to win? What do the Pittsburgh Penguins need to do to win? I guess I'll start and just say, quite honestly, for the Rangers, all they really need to do to win is play Rangers hockey, because when they're playing Rangers hockey, they're doing it really well. But play the fast-paced Rangers hockey for a full 60 minutes, because you've seen when they give the Penguins a sniff, the Penguins are able to reel the game in and slow it down, and the Rangers are not as good at the quote-unquote typical playoff style hockey as the Pittsburgh Penguins are. And maybe that's an experience thing, or who knows. But when the Rangers are playing the way that the Rangers should be playing, they really are dominating a lot of this series. And so conversely for the Penguins, obviously the answer there is slow it down. Get to that playoff style hockey that the Rangers aren't as comfortable playing. And a little side tidbit as well: the Rangers, they got to stay out of the box too. Their PK is only 66%. But their power play is clicking at 25%. So, if you can find a way to draw some penalties, get your power play on the ice. But yeah, when you're only killing 2/3 of the penalties you're taking, you got to stay out of the box. So,
Yeah,
what do
the
you think
thing
about this
is,
series?
well, yeah, I think that I agree they got to stay out of the box, but I really think a lot of that's the officiating's been very like hit or miss. A lot of these calls have been very, I mean, both ways have been very soft. They're calling cross checks and holds that like I really don't think are there, and I really just think, like you said, the Rangers need to just find a way to consistently play 60 minutes of, of their game. They can't let the Penguins hang around, because when they let the Penguins hang around, any mistake you make could be dangerous. Like they can convert on those. But if you're running away with the game, then those mistakes aren't as apparent and they aren't as dangerous. And if the Rangers continue to play that way, they don't have to ask Igor Shesterkin to stand on his head and make, 39 saves every night anyway. And for the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's really just keep doing what you're doing, like hang in there and just keep being as opportunistic as you can. You might want to get your third and fourth line more involved and get a little more depth and, more depth scoring out of the roster that isn't just the Crosby line, but I don't know, man. Sidney Crosby's a hard guy to bet against when he's playing as well as he is. I mean, I don't think he had as many points last night. I think he only had one, but it's going to be hard to keep him completely off the board. So I don't know. That's what I really think it is. I think they just need to keep sticking with it.
Yeah, and I mean, prediction-wise, I'm still very confident in the Rangers' ability to win this series. I still think that they can do it, especially when you consider that what they have to do is quite. It sounds simple. Obviously, I know it's not, but play the way that you know you can play is an easier ask than the Pittsburgh Penguins try to find a way to turn the clock back 10 years and hang with these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that the Rangers are throwing at you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a hard ask, but
so I would still be confident, and I am still confident. I still think the Rangers are going to win and take this series. I believe I said the series was going 7 anyway.
I did as well.
But yeah, I'm still confident. But we'll see. Game 4 is happening, and we'll see what happens with that. I mean, speaking of teams that I was confident in, I mean, Jesus, Florida Panthers down 2-1 to the Washington Capitals. I'll go to you first on this one. What is going on in this series? This is a very odd series. Games 1 and 2 in the Sunshine State. Washington picks up the win in Game 1. Florida comes back and wins Game 2. Washington comes back and wins Game 3 at home. What is going on in this series? Because I thought that this was pretty open and shut, but it is not looking like that's the case.
Yeah, no, this is definitely looking to be more of a series than I think either of us thought it was going to be. Yeah, this is a series I really don't know what to make of, to be honest with you, because sure, Florida's dropping these games, but I don't really think it's anything Washington's doing. It really just feels more like Florida's not playing well. They're just not. I don't know. Florida looks like they've never played a game together in their life right now. And it's very strange considering how well they've been playing together all year,
Yeah, I mean, I really think that's it. And I don't mean to take anything away from the Washington Capitals because they've been incredibly opportunistic on their chances. But it really feels like there's just some weird disconnect, right, from the Panthers. Their passing is not crisp. It's off the mark. Their shots are going high and wide. They're not hitting the corners like we know they can. We haven't really seen anything all that magical coming out from Barkov or Huberdeau. We know that they can bring fans to their feet with just a simple move, and we haven't really seen that either. And again, I'm not taking anything from the Capitals. They're playing well, they're defending well, but it feels like these passes aren't being broken up by great defensive plays, or that the Capitals are defending really well and Barkov can't get through the middle. It feels like maybe this is the one thing that I pointed out, at the beginning of our preview, where I said that a lot of this team doesn't have very deep playoff experience. Even guys like Barkov and Huberdeau, who have been here for what feels like forever, even though they're both still young, don't have the most deep runs under their belt. So maybe that's it. Maybe they're gripping the sticks a little too tight. They're trying to do too much in certain circumstances, and then in other circumstances they're trying to do too little, trying to be too conservative. There's a disconnect, and
there's something. Yeah,
the real issue, honestly, is the fact that they have a head coach who does not have any playoff experience, to my knowledge, in his head coaching career. And so fixing that disconnect is a big ask of someone like him who hasn't been here. Um, it's a very weird series, isn't it? 4-2, 5-1, and
Yeah.
6-1 being the scores. Like, I guess my question to you is like, what do the Panthers have to do to climb back into the series?
I mean, they gotta just get their shit together. Like, I don't like I know it's like a really reductive, you know, way of putting it, but like that's really just it. Like they've got to find a way to play like the way they played all year because they've been so dangerous all year. So I don't understand why they're having so much trouble all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like I really like I don't know. It's tough because it's not like they're getting bad goaltending either. Like they're getting good goaltending
Oh
or
yeah,
decent goaltending at that. I mean, it's not like lights out, but like they're getting decent enough goaltending to win these games, you know? So it's just like I don't understand how they go from being like this world-beating, like unstoppable force in the regular season to running into the Washington Capitals who aren't presenting them with really any obstacles that they haven't faced before. Like they're not doing anything that really should be stopping them like this, you know? And like you said, I don't want to take anything from the Washington Capitals because, like, obviously they're doing something right. They're winning the games, but like, it's hard to give them credit when it's really like I feel like it's not anything that they're doing. You know, like I can't point to anything that Washington Capitals are doing and saying like that one thing is making the difference, or these 3 or 4 things are making the difference. It's really just I don't know. Like Florida just needs to find a way to like play. Period.
should we quote John Tortorella and say, "Don't shit your pants out there" for the
I
Florida
mean, yeah,
Panthers?
really, like that's really it. And like you said, like I know their coach doesn't have as really almost any coaching experience or coaching experience at the NHL level anyway. But I mean, we saw it all year. Like this leadership group was enough to pull this team in the direction to get them to win games and win them pretty convincingly at that. So I really don't see why they look so unprepared and so, I guess, like lackluster to start the playoffs. Because like there's no reason they should be. You know, they don't have any big injuries. Like they actually are healthier now than they were 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, and there's just it's like I said, it just looks disconnected. And honestly, if I had to project what's going to happen in the series, am I all that confident that the Florida Panthers are going to succeed and ultimately end up winning the series? I'm way less confident in the Florida Panthers than I am in the New York Rangers or the Carolina Hurricanes. I'll say that right now. And it's not necessarily because they're down 2-1, because obviously I'm super confident in the Rangers and they're down 2-1. It's just that the Florida Panthers, it's hard to fix something as nebulous as a disconnect, especially when you have a coach who hasn't been there, hasn't done that. And so he's kind of learning on the fly, with a lot of the players kind of learning on the fly. Um, it's going to be interesting. I would say it's 50-50 in my opinion, if the Florida Panthers can undo the damage that they've already done to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, like I never want to count a team like the Panthers outright because they are good. But
Right.
like it's hard to really feel confident in them when they really have looked as bad as they have, you know?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's interesting things going on in that series, and we'll wrap up the Eastern Conference series with the Toronto Maple Leafs 2-1 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Toronto came out and made a huge statement in Game One, absolutely blowing the Tampa Bay Lightning off the ice. 5-0, I believe, was the score of that game. Uh, just complete and total domination on the part of the Florida Panthers, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Game 2 was a 5-3 win for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Game 3 was a 5-2 win for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So yeah, 5-0, 5-3, and then 5-2. this has been a very interesting series for me because game one, the Tampa Bay Lightning looked absolutely horrible. I mean, they looked flat, they looked slow, the Maple Leafs were all over them. The Lightning didn't really even generate that much offense. Game two, the Lightning seemed, that score I think is a little misleading. 5-3. It sounds like a close game. The Lightning were up pretty big, and then the Maple Leafs scored 2 late goals. And in game three, the Maple Leafs were in control for most of the game as well. And it's just this series to me feels like two very, very similar teams. Just whoever gets that momentum first kind of runs away with it. And it's been exciting. It's been a very fun series to watch. But man, has it been weird. What are your thoughts on this series?
I mean, it's pretty much a complete reversal of where I thought it was going to be, right? I really thought that the Lightning were going to be in a pretty commanding position at this point in the series, but yeah, they just don't look very good. I mean, the Maple Leafs are really... I mean, the Maple Leafs are making the Tampa Bay Lightning look slow, which is hard to do because even without all their depth, the Lightning are still at their core a fast team who can score goals. And the Maple Leafs are making them look like they're slow as anything. And it's kind of strange to see that the Lightning are having so much trouble scoring goals, considering that the Maple Leafs aren't known to be a defensive stalwart, So it's definitely like an interesting series. I don't know if I feel as confident in the Lightning as I did a week or two ago before this all started now.
What I gotta say, for all the smack that we've talked about the Leafs defense, I mean, that 5-minute penalty kill in game one was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in the playoffs. I mean, the Leafs handled a 5-minute major off of a completely idiotic play by what's his face? I forget who went and got himself 15 minutes because it was Kyle Clifford went and got himself just solid 5-minute major. But man, it looked like a Leafs power play. Like the Leafs killed the clock. They controlled the puck. They got like 4 or 5 shorthanded rushes up the ice. Like it was something to behold. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the Leafs are defending to a level where I can then feel confident saying they're no longer a glass cannon, because I still think they very much are in fact a glass cannon. But they've found something about the Lightning that they can pretty much close down and shut off and really kind of handle most of the firepower that this Lightning team wants to bring to the table. I mean, it's been impressive to say the least. And, Matthews and Marner are as good as advertised, 6 points and 5 points for them each. And they're doing all of this with not a tremendous amount of help from their second line. Like Nylander, I think has 0 points. Tavares only has 1 point. David Kamp's been fantastic. He has 2 goals already. Pierre Engvall with 3 points. Ilya Mikheyev with 3 points. Like they're getting that third line involved, which is huge. And I think that's a big difference right now, is that the Lightning aren't getting much from their depth, whereas the Leafs are getting exactly what they need. Like Victor Hedman has 4 points. Kucherov has 3 points, but then Palat 2, Killorn 2, Perry 1, Point 1, Colton 1, Hagel 1. Like they're not getting the depth scoring that the Leafs are getting. And Vasilevsky has looked incredibly human in this series, which is not something we're really used to seeing from him. So I guess going forward, what do the Lightning need to do to kind of try to flip the script, and how confident are you in the defending champ's ability to turn this around?
I mean, I think the big thing they need to do is to find a way to take the Leafs' speed out of the game, because we've seen how dangerous it's been for them, especially around guys like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't really feel all that confident after these first 3 games in or the first 2 games in Tampa's ability to really turn this thing around. I mean, they really just haven't looked all that convincing. Like, they're not doing anything that's leading me to believe that they can overcome this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think...
I mean, game 2 was pretty convincing, like you said, like 5-3. Like, they were ahead big, and then the Leafs clawed back into it somewhat. But, I mean, when they have no answer for the Leafs' speed and the Leafs continue to exploit it, they keep getting like blown out by the Leafs. So it'll be interesting to see if they can find a way to slow them down, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think, ironically, with a team that's as talented as the Lightning are, they need to find a way to kind of get the game back to a more grindy, kind of in the corners style of game, because they have the players to do it with guys like Corey Perry and Zach Bogosian, and their depth isn't as good as it's been in the past, but they certainly have the roster to be able to do so. So ironically, with a team that's as talented as the Tampa Bay Lightning, they need to slow the game down, and they need to get the Toronto Maple Leafs defending, because as good as the defense has been so far for the Toronto Maple Leafs, we know that there's cracks in that armor, and if you can get through, you'll have a good time. Am I confident? Ooh, look, the Toronto Maple Leafs aren't exactly the kings of closing out series when they had the lead. You could look at what happened last year for plenty of evidence of that. So I'm not going to say the Lightning are out of it, but I'm going to stick, again, as confident as I am in the Panthers. I'm pretty much confident to the same level of the other team in Florida. It's a coin flip. Who knows what you're going to get out of them at this point, right? So we'll see. So we'll go over to the West, and we'll start in the Pacific just because I think these have definitely been the more boring of the series. No offense to these teams, but Calgary and Dallas, 1-0 win for Calgary in game 1, 1-0 win for Dallas in game 2. Very much a playoff type series, and then the Dallas Stars take a 4-2 win in game 3, which was actually 3-2 with an empty netter. And boy, doesn't this really feel like the Calgary Flames are just Calgary flaming so hard right now? Like, am I wrong in saying that this feels exactly like the same Flames we've seen show up or not show up in the playoffs the last 4 or 5 times they've even been here?
It's tough to say, right? Because they've been so good this year, and like they really don't look like they have. I mean, their depth goal scoring is all but dried up, right? I mean, 1 goal or 3 goals through 3 games isn't exactly a winning formula for you if you're the Calgary Flames. But that being said, like Dallas has only scored 5 goals in those 3 games, so like neither team is really lighting the other one up. So it's weird, and it's hard to say like. I don't really think either team's playing badly is the problem. You know what I mean? Like I think Dallas is exactly where they want to be. Dallas wants to try to play this more, a little lower scoring affair, a little closer to the chest than Calgary might, because I think Calgary pound for pound has a little more firepower up front than Dallas does these days. But I don't know. It's just a very weird series for me. It's very like it's very competitive, but like not very interesting, if that makes any sense. Like these two teams really are playing at like a very even level for most of these games, but like they're not very exciting games. I mean, 1-0. And that's not to say they can be exciting 1-0 games. It's just that like these were not that, exception to the rule.
Right. I mean, the thing about the Flames is that they've been underwhelming to this point, I think, which is my comment about like them being the Flames, because the last couple playoff runs we've seen the Flames, this has been the theme. They've just been incredibly underwhelming, right? And I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. They're playing hockey the way the Dallas Stars want to play hockey. And, I came into this series saying, all right, Dallas has no shot. Nothing's clicking for them. Guys have fallen off a table. And to a large extent, I wasn't really all that wrong. They're not doing anything that we haven't seen them do in the regular season. The difference is right now that they've managed to somehow swindle the high-flying offensive power of the Calgary Flames into playing the way that they want to play. And maybe that's part of players feeling like they need to play this way because it's the playoffs, but also to a certain extent, what was working in the regular season is the way you should be playing in the playoffs. Like, you don't go from one of the highest scoring teams in the league to all of a sudden thinking, okay, now we're going to defend our way to a Stanley Cup, right? Because it's not going to work that way. You pretty much have to lay your cards out on a table and say, this is how we're going to play. And I mean, I'm not saying that teams don't tighten up in the playoffs. Like, obviously, every team tightens up. Even the most high flying of offensive teams tightens up in the playoffs. But to batten down the hatches to the level that the Flames have is obviously not working. And I don't know. I mean, I still have confidence in the Flames' ability to do this, but I'm not as confident in the Flames' ability as I am in, like, say, the Rangers' ability, right? Just because, like, the Rangers have been really, really compelling. There's just a couple of things that need to tighten up. Whereas, like, I'm looking at the Flames and I'm like, you're not showing me that you're still the same Flames team. I'm seeing pretty much an entirely different team right now, and I don't know. It's kind of weird. And good on Dallas, right? Because the Dallas Stars are playing exactly the way that the Dallas Stars need to play to win the series. So how do you feel about this series going forward?
I mean, if Calgary can't find a way to open this up a little bit and stop playing this slow, methodical game that Dallas wants to play, I really don't think they have an answer for them. I mean, Dallas has been pretty smothering in these first 3 games. And if the Calgary can't find a way to maybe, I mean, not even generate depth scoring, but generate any scoring at all at this point. I mean, they obviously need more from their top guys. They need more from Johnny Gaudreau, from Matthew Tkachuk. Like, they need their big guns to be their big guns. Because if they can, bring all that offensive firepower to bear against the Dallas Stars, I really don't think the Dallas Stars have an answer for them. Like, they're not going to be able to play like a skating game with them. They can't go goal for goal with the Calgary Flames.
No. Yeah, I think this next game is going to be huge. And obviously, okay, idiot, right? Like, if they lose, they go down 3-1. But it's more about the Flames, like you said, exactly like you said, showing me that I can believe that you can find a way to open this game up. Because if you go in there, and even if you win another 1-0 game, that doesn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need this Flames to come out there, put up like 4 or 5 goals, and show us like, okay, Johnny Gaudreau hit 100 points for a reason. Matthew Tkachuk set a career high in points for a reason. There's just got to be a change, right? But maybe this is part of the Daryl Sutter experience, right? Maybe this is just what he wants to do in the playoffs, and I don't know. He kind of picked a bad team.
Strange. It'd be really strange for him to think that. I mean, like, I know this is how he played with the LA Kings, but that was like the LA Kings' whole identity with Sutter behind the bench. Like, they played that way all 82 games, and then just continued to play that way in the playoffs. Whereas not Dallas, whereas Calgary just needs to play to their identity. Like, they need to just play Calgary Flames hockey. Like, I know we keep saying like vague things like that, but that's really what it is. Like, they're not. It's not like, they need this 1 or 2 things. It's like they need to just stop playing Dallas's brand of hockey. They need to find a way to break the trap. They need to find a way to get Dallas to try to have to skate a little more, because that's the only way they're going to generate,
It's been very weird to see the Flames not generate anything off the rush specifically, because that's a big advantage that they have is speed, and they're not really using that at all. But credit to Jake Ottinger. He's playing really, really well. Credit to the Dallas Stars. They're playing really well as well. We'll see where that series goes. And, I mean, speaking of Daryl Sutter's old team, the LA Kings, I think that this series is, like, the most open and shut to this point. LA takes game 1, 4-3 in Edmonton. Edmonton takes game 2, 6-0, and then Edmonton comes into LA and takes game 3, 8-2. I guess, the obvious question is, does LA even have a chance in the rest of these games?
Not unless Philip Deneau can magically turn himself into Ryan O'Reilly and put down Connor McDavid. The answer is no, because, okay, this is going to be mean, but, like, whatever. LA has no business being in the playoffs this year. Like, this team, this roster has no business being in this spot. they're really only here because the Vegas Golden Knights dramatically underperformed expectations this year. You know, so like the fact that it is so open and shut makes sense. Edmonton, for all their faults, are a playoff caliber hockey team, and they should be dumpstering the LA Kings, who, for all intents and purposes, are not a playoff caliber team. I mean, there is not a lot I can say that like LA can do to really change the tide of this. You know what I mean? Like they don't have the talent on the roster to do this. Like even on the off chance you get lucky and shut down Connor McDavid, you're not going to shut down Leon Draisaitl, and apparently you also can't shut down Evander Kane either. So like when they're running, you know, that deep in their top six, and you really have no answer, there's not a lot you can do.
Yeah, I think a large part of the game one win. I'm going to give credit to the LA Kings in that game one win because they played fantastically in game one. It is unfortunate that the game winning goal was pretty much a complete fluke by Mike Smith, who everyone loves to say how great Mike Smith is at playing the puck. Everyone loves to say how great he is. I'm going to put my foot down at this point and come out and say I genuinely think Mike Smith sucks at handling the puck. He just does it so often that everyone forgets about the mistakes he makes. But he served up another pizza right up the boards, and then credit, I guess, makes a Dominic Hasek style stick save flying back into his crease. But then the puck goes around the boards again. They shoot it from the point, tip in by Phillips, no, game over, right? I'm going to give a lot of credit to LA for that win because that was a very great way for them to start that series. I think they played fantastically, but since then, it's not even that they're down 2-1. It's that there's been nothing for me to look at and say, okay, they're doing this well, Even teams that are losing big, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, we could look at game 2 or game 1 and say, okay, or game 3, and we'll say, okay, they lost, but we know the formula here. Slow down the Toronto Maple Leafs. Do the Tampa Bay Lightning have the team to do that? Yes. We know that they can slow down this team. Games 2 and 3 have given me nothing to look at from this LA team and say, oh, here's something they're doing well. Oh, okay, yeah, they lost, but Connor McDavid was kept off the score sheet, or they killed a lot of these penalties, which, no. And the only bright spot I'll say is despite the stats, Jonathan Quick has played really well in this series. This is not on his shoulders at all. But man, there is... I hate to say it, but I think this series is done. I think the Kings got their one game. I called a sweep. They decided to give me the middle finger. I think they got their one game. Maybe they squeak out one more game at home. I think that this series is pretty open and shut. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be inclined to agree. Unless for some reason Edmonton decides to just stop playing altogether. I don't see how LA gets themselves back into this. Because, like you said, the next game 2 and 3 weren't even close. To come in and get blown off the ice by a collective of 15 goals, or almost, like, and getting shut out 6-0 in one of those games, like, they clearly just have no answer for the Edmonton Oilers. And then, so yeah, it's pretty open and shut. I mean, I know before this we said that Edmonton's so iffy as a team and such a glass cannon. Like LA maybe had a shot at it, but like that very clearly like evaporated, And I guess credit to Edmonton, like they are playing well, but I don't think they're necessarily doing anything. I think it's just that like LA just does not have the team to compete with them.
Yeah, and on the bright side, if any Kings fans are listening, this is fantastic experience for the young players on this team to be in this position where they really shouldn't be. You get Quentin Byfield a couple of reps in the playoffs, right? You get some of your younger players a couple of reps in the playoffs. Cal Peterson got into the game the other night. Great experience, but man, it's going to take something to get this game and series back under control for the LA Kings. So we'll swap over to the Central Division. Another series that is looking pretty open and shut, man. Nashville, Colorado. I remember I said if there was any one team that had upset alert written all over their forehead, it was Nashville. Boy, did they decide to prove me wrong. 3-0 lead for the Colorado Avalanche. 7-2 in game one. 2-1 in overtime. I mean, Connor Ingram played out of his freaking mind in game two. That was one of the best performances I've ever seen in my life in the playoffs in game two. You know, that was probably the best performance I've ever seen in the playoffs. Second only to, I think, Igor Shesterkin's performance in game one to the Rangers in terms of goalie performances this year so far. But then game three, 7-3 for the Colorado Avalanche. Again, I have to ask the question, are the Nashville Predators done?
Oh, yeah. Stick a fork in them. It's over.
David Riddick has a 19.91 goals against average. Holy shit. I didn't even realize.
Got smoked,
yeah,
bro.
he pulled it in. He played 16 minutes and gave up 5 goals and 19 goals against average. Sorry, go ahead, continue.
No, it's like he just got smoked, bro. Like, that's...
Is there anything that Nashville's doing that can compel you in any way?
Oh, no. I mean, game two was close, but I think that was more just like Colorado playing to Nashville's level than the other way around. And like, when Colorado plays up to like their own tempo and the way they want to play, Nashville just can't hang. And it's really unfortunate because like they have a good team. It's just like their goaltending is really like, not that it's like a problem, but like Connor Ingram being forced in this position really isn't fair to him, you know? He's playing his heart out, but like the rest, they just don't have it. They really needed UC Saros to have any shot at this.
Yeah, I mean, if Saros is playing, I still think the Colorado Avalanche are up in this series, but I think they're only up 2-1. I think with UC Saros and net, the Nashville Predators probably win game two. And again, that's not a knock on Connor Ingram. That was a fantastic performance, but the Avalanche just kind of looked a bit off that game, so I think Saros probably would have been able to just lock him out. But even with Saros, I mean, the middle of the ice is just like free reign for the Colorado Avalanche, and the rush has just been absolutely devastating to the Nashville Predators. And, you know, they're getting decent scoring. I mean, 2 goals, 1 goal, 3 goals. It's actually, I take that back. You know, they're not to beat this Avalanche team, you have to do one of two things, right? You either lock them out with like a 2012 LA Kings style defense, or you outscore them. And the Predators are not big enough or fast enough to lock them out, and they're not good enough offensively to outscore them. And it's really showing. Yeah. Sorry, Predators fans. Quite honestly, should you have been in this position? Maybe. I think the Predators are a pretty good team. I think they deserve to be in the playoffs, but that, I pointed it out, choking that game to the Arizona Coyotes instead of playing the Flames in round one, you played the Avalanche as a result because you blew a 4-goal lead to the Coyotes. This is what you get. You earned this. Congratulations. Yeah, so this is done, right? We're wrapping this one up.
Shut. Yeah, they might get one more. They might get one game out of them and force a 5th game, but I really don't see them coming back from 3-0.
Yeah, it's looking like an open and shut case, detective. Yeah. So we'll go over to the other series, which is the Minnesota Wild St. Louis Blues. Again, we can say pretty confidently, given right now the recording time, that the Blues are going to tie the series up 2-2. They're up 4-2. The Wild have an empty net right now with 2 minutes left to go in the game. So we'll call it, for argument's sake, a 2-2 series. St. Louis coming in and winning game 1. And then Minnesota Wild end up winning game 1. Oh no, I'm an idiot. Sorry. Let me stop being dumb. The Blues win game 1 4-0. Wild come back and win game 2 6-2. Then they win game 3 5-1. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like the Blues are going to win this game, maybe 4-2, 5-2 with an empty netter. We'll see. But yeah, what have you seen from this series so far?
I mean, this has definitely been outside of the Rangers series. I think this has definitely been the other most competitive series in the playoffs. It really looks like both teams are bringing it. I mean, St. Louis didn't have great showings in games 2 or 3, but when they actually do play, they manage to play. They have the ability to play some pretty exciting hockey. So I don't know. It's definitely the most interesting series. It might be the most compelling, honestly, outside of the Rangers, just because the series, the teams are a little more equal, I think, in terms of like where they are, in their competitive arcs. Whereas I think like the Rangers Penguins series has a more like, old versus young dynamic to it. So this series was a little more like two teams kind of in their primes competing at the height, like at the highest level now. Um, I mean, Kirill Kaprizov's the real deal. I'm glad to see that like he is, you know, everything that Minnesota wanted him to be, especially in the playoffs here.
Yeah, I think that this has been a really exciting series in terms of like the back and forth of it all. Um, in terms of the games going back and forth, I mean, or within the games, it seems like one team just kind of comes out and dominates. 4-0, 5-1, 5-2 wins, right? But the overall narrative of it being a pretty close series is pretty exciting. It's been weird just in terms of it seems like whoever gets that momentum kind of just runs away with it. And the St. Louis Blues are doing all of this in spite of what I'll say is just average performances from their goaltenders to this point, or goaltender, I should say, Ville Husso. Started game 1, 2, and 3. He has a 302 and a 906. So, just pretty par for the course standard goaltending, maybe even substandard goaltending to this point out of the St. Louis Blues goaltending, which is something that we pointed out, is a weakness of this team, right? What are we going to get out of these St. Louis Blues goaltenders? That was a big question mark. Jordan Binnington is playing game 4. He's made 28 saves out of 30 so far, so maybe that's the answer. St. Louis actually just put up their 5th goal, so yeah, this game's a wrap. So 2-2, heading back to Minnesota. Where do you think this series goes from here?
Right to game 7, baby. This one is one of the ones that's too tight to call for me. I don't. This is the only one I can't really look and say like I think this team's gonna win it because like it has been so back and forth. Like either team, like you said, not so much in the games, but from game to game, each team has shown the ability to come in and just completely wipe the floor with the other team. So to me, it's really just going to be a matter of like who can string together like two of those games now, whether it be Minnesota going into St. Louis or yeah, going back to Minnesota winning and then going into St. Louis to close out. But like, I don't know, it's going to be tough. It's just so hard to pick which of these teams is going to win 2 of the next 3, you know, considering they've split all the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, Bennington coming in and having a pretty strong game is great for the St. Louis Blues. Maybe that can kind of help stabilize things a little bit. I don't think the games were Ville Husso's fault by any stretch. A lot of the plays that the Wild were getting off were just really, really nice plays. Not really much he could do on those, but much like Georgiev coming into that game against the Rangers or against the Penguins, when it really wasn't Shesterkin's fault, just that subtle change of the guys in the locker room, like being like, okay, we really let this guy down. Let's unhook the trailer and get our shit together, right? We can't keep embarrassing our goalies like this. Maybe that's just kind of the mentality there. So, yeah, I completely agree with you. I have no idea what's going to happen with this series because it seems like I said one team comes out, gets momentum early, and then just runs away with it. So, which is odd considering that these are two pretty veteran teams on both sides. Usually veteran teams are very good at kind of reeling things in and slowing the game down and saying, okay, look, yes, we're down 2-0 in the first period. Let's kind of just get back to our game and fix it here. But it seems like these two teams are like, no, I'm just going to come out and score and win. And you're going to have to deal with that. So
Yeah, this is my game now.
very interesting series. I do agree. Yeah, I have no idea who to call for
I
it. So
called Blues in 7 originally, but like
I did too.
it's
I think.
tough. I think
Uh,
it's really just because I think I underestimated Minnesota, to be honest with you. Like I know if they finished ahead of St. Louis in the standings, but I really just attributed that to like the Central Division teams kind of not playing as well as they could have, especially to St. Louis who had issues with their goaltending all year. So like I feel kind of bad for selling Minnesota short, but like yeah, I don't know. Tough.
so uh, right now, and I mean this goes for you too, since you and I picked all the same teams to win. Our picks are currently we have one, two teams in the lead of their series. That is Avalanche and Oilers. We have
Which were pretty easy to call, to be honest.
two teams that are tied, and then four of our picks are down in the series. So,
Yeah. Yeah. If
what a
anything,
playoffs! What a playoffs!
what the hell is that like philosopher's name that used to like predict the future? The fucking was it Nostradamus or whatever? We are not oracles like he can't predict the future because this happens every year, bro. Like we always put our predictions out. Like I'm really confident in this. I know I feel this way, and then like one of the teams we pick comes out like a big fat fucking egg, and it's like, God damn it. And this year it's Florida, man. Florida's making us look like not like clowns, but like they're making themselves look like clowns and us look like liars.
Well, I was gonna say, how do you feel about your Stanley Cup matchup right now? Because I had Florida beating the Avalanche, and like obviously the Avalanche look great, right? It's hard to really say if they're looking good enough to run it all the way up because they're kind of beaten up on a team that maybe shouldn't be here, maybe is a little bit outclassed.
Considering I have Florida beating the Calgary Flames for the Stanley Cup final, I'm not feeling all that confident. I think every year one needs to pick the goddamn Ducks or
The
like the
Ducks or the
Blues.
Blues, yeah.
The Blues in like 2012, 2013 would come out, win President's trophies, stomp on teams, and then get absolutely ass blasted by the LA Kings in the playoffs every year. And I never learned my lesson.
And the Blues would do the same thing, but they'd get destroyed by the Chicago Blackhawks every year.
Yup. Like I just ah,
You know what? How do I feel about the Panthers running it up to the finals? I'll say I'm feeling about a 33% confidence that that's actually going to happen because even if they get past the Florida or the Washington Capitals,
well, you could say the Florida Panthers they get past
yeah,
themselves.
they haven't been super compelling. How do I feel about the Avalanche running it up to the finals? I'll say I'm 60%. They're playing really well, but again, it's one of those things where it's hard to gauge. Like, okay, are they really playing well, or are they just playing a team in Nashville that like just doesn't have any answers and has John freaking Hines behind the bench, right?
Here's the thing, right? Like Colorado has, I think they could do it. I would be confident in still keeping that my pick if I were you, especially because like Colorado has seemingly a bunch of really favorable matchups if they win these series, right? Like say like Dallas knocks off Calgary, they would end up win. No, yeah, they would pull Dallas then, right?
Let me pull up the
Or no,
bracket here. NHL
because they don't know
bracket
it. They wouldn't because they don't
challenge.
reseed, right?
Uh,
You think I'd know how this playoff format works by now? I
well,
always forget whether they reseed or not.
they they don't
Right.
normally,
Okay.
but there was, and I don't think it's happening this year. There was talks about them reseeding, uh, reseeding after that, but they're not doing it this year. I don't believe.
Right. So they would just end up playing whoever wins between Minnesota St. Louis, which
What?
actually I lied is a real tough
Yeah, yeah.
would be a real tough draw for Colorado. Either way, honestly. Like I think they have a better shot against Minnesota, but St. Louis would be a tough draw.
If they can get out of their own division, I don't really think anybody in the Pacific Division can really stop them.
Or
Or
if
the
Dallas
Dallas, yeah.
manages to come out, yeah, like yeah, I don't see it either. The only team that I think realistically can stop them is the Calgary Flames, and Calgary might find themselves getting, the boot in the first round by the Dallas Stars, who also realistically probably shouldn't be here. Like I know we keep saying that like teams shouldn't be here as if like they didn't earn this through 82 games, but it's just like if you look at that roster and the way the quality of like the product they put out on the ice every night in terms of like their level of play and the competitive nature of their team, Dallas was really not that good this year.
What
Dallas was incredibly lackluster until like the second half of the year.
what I'll say is we don't mean that so much as an insult in terms of like they shouldn't be here, but the bottom line or reality of the situation is that the Vegas Golden Knights should probably be in here somewhere, and the Vancouver Canucks also should probably be in here somewhere. So you could pretty much replace the Stars. I'm gonna keep the Predators because I think the Predators roster is really good. You could probably replace the Stars, and you could definitely replace the LA Kings. So you replace the LA Kings with the Canucks, and then you replace the Stars with the or you replace the LA Kings with the Knights, and then you replace the Stars with the Canucks. I think would be more in line with like the roster construction of these teams. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah. So, anything else you want to add last minute before we wrap up, and then by the time we do this next week? So the way this playoff format's going to work for our podcast scheduling purposes is we're going to wait until the first round is over. And then we're gonna do our first round wrap up / second round preview. Unless it like gets stretched really far out, then we'll end up doing like a wrap up on certain series,
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So we'll see.
It's just like content should be fairly weekly, just because. Actually, it's probably gonna be more like an every other week thing, right? Because the series started this week, so Game 7's wouldn't probably happen until the beginning of next week.
Well, you know what we could do? If at least 3 of the series are done by next week's podcast time, then we'll wrap up those series and then wait for the others to finish. But if there's like only like one series done, I don't know. I think
a 15-minute episode on just why LA beat Edmonton, and it's just us sitting here for 15 minutes going, what did you expect? Like, a 36-year-old Jonathan Quick, like.
Yeah. So here's what we'll do, guys, for the schedule. If at least 3 series are done by next week, we'll wrap up those 3 series and wait for the rest to finish. If not, then we'll wait until at least half the series are done. We'll wrap up some series and stuff. And we'll do previews of the next round if we know the matchups and whatnot. So yeah, it'll probably still be weekly, but if you don't see episodes coming out till like Sundays and Saturdays, you know why. Just keep that in mind. So so we'll wrap up here, and who knows, maybe next week again we're talking about the Florida nuking my bracket and why Alex Ovechkin is the greatest player of all time. I don't know. We'll see.
Alex Ovechkin single-handedly goes out and scores 15 goals in the next 2 games to seal the deal, and has 30 goals in the playoffs, and we have to just admit he's the greatest goal scorer of all time. But barring that, or Christ himself intervening in one of these series, I really don't think,
And saved on the goal line by Jesus.
Yeah, right? Like, the puck's, rolling through Bobrovsky, and Jesus just, pokes it with his finger and stops it. He's like,
well,
not today, my son.
Jesus does save, right? So...
Well, only Bernie saves more than God.
That's facts. That is facts. So, Bernie Parent starting in Game 4 for the...
Oh my God.
Florida Panthers.
80-year-old Bernie Parent comes shambling onto the ice.
Oh, God. So,
oh my God.
We'll see you guys again next week or next episode.